My name is Dolores Williams, and last Tuesday, my 42-year-old son looked me straight in the eye and said 7 words that made me realize I didn't know him at all. Mom, we're moving to Florida next week. I'm 67 years old, been living in the same house in Jackson, Mississippi for the past 35 years. The house where I raised my children, where my husband James took his last breath, where every wall holds a memory and every creak in the floorboards tells a story. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the one James built with his own hands back in 1992, drinking my coffee from the mug Jerome gave me for Mother's Day when he was 8 years old. It says, "World's Best Mom" in faded red letters. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own home, please hit that like button to let me know I'm not alone in this, and subscribe to my channel, because what I'm about to tell you might save you from what I went through. Also, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. It helps me know I'm not just talking to myself here, that somebody out there understands what it's like when your own family makes you feel like a stranger. The morning sun was streaming through the lace curtains my mother made before she passed, casting those familiar shadows across the checkered linoleum floor that we'd been meaning to replace for the last 10 years. I could hear the cardinals singing in the magnolia tree outside, the same tree Jerome fell from and broke his arm when he was 12. Everything was normal, peaceful even. Then my son walked into the kitchen, poured himself orange juice like it was any other day, sat down across from me, and dropped those 7 words like they were nothing more than a comment about the weather. The coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. I felt my heart skip, then race, then skip again. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. Jerome was scrolling through his phone, not even looking at me, his thumb moving across that screen with the casual indifference of someone who just mentioned they were going to the grocery store, not moving 1,300 miles away. "When were you planning to tell me?" The words came out steady, but my hand holding that coffee cup was trembling. I set it down carefully on the wooden placemat, the one from the set Sheila bought me 3 Christmases ago, when she was still pretending to care about my feelings. Jerome looked up from his phone, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not surprise, just mild confusion, like I'd asked him something unreasonable. "I'm telling you now," he said, taking another sip of juice. "We got everything sorted. Sheila found a great place in Tampa. 3 bedrooms, pool, the works." We. There was that word hanging in the air between us like smoke from a snuffed-out candle. We, not him alone on some job transfer. We, him and Sheila. The same. Sheila, who hadn't shown her face at breakfast in over 2 months, always claiming she had early meetings or errands to run. The same Sheila who moved into my house 5 years ago for what was supposed to be 3 months maximum while they got back on their feet after Jerome lost his job at the automotive plant. Let me tell you something about those 5 years. When Jerome first asked if they could stay with me, I didn't hesitate. That's what mothers do. Your child needs help, you help them. James had been gone for 2 years at that point, and honestly, having them in the house made it feel less empty. Those first few months were actually pleasant. Sheila would cook dinner sometimes, her special jambalaya that even I had to admit was good. Jerome would fix things around the house, oil the squeaky hinges, clean the gutters, all those tasks that had piled up since James passed. But somewhere along the way, and I can't even pinpoint exactly when, things shifted. It was gradual, like weight gain or hair turning gray. One day, you look in the mirror and realize everything's changed, but you can't recall the exact moment it happened. That's how it was with Jerome and Sheila taking over my house. First, it was just storing a few boxes in the garage, then it was redecorating the guest room. Then suddenly, I was the one being asked to turn my television down because Sheila needed quiet for her work calls. "Florida," I repeated, tasting the word like something foreign on my tongue. "And the house? This house?" Jerome waved his hand dismissively, that same gesture his father used to make when he thought I was worrying about nothing. We'll handle all that. You don't need to worry about anything. You don't need to worry about anything. Those 6 words hit me harder than the original 7. Since when did my own son decide what I did or didn't need to worry about in my own house? The house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 3 decades? The house where his baby picture still hung in the hallway? I studied my son's face, really looked at him for the first time in months. When had he gotten that confident, almost arrogant set to his jaw? When had his eyes stop meeting mine when he talked? This wasn't the boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who cried on my shoulder when his high school girlfriend broke up with him, who called me 3 times a day when James was in hospice just to make sure I was eating. Jerome, I said slowly, setting both hands flat on the table, feeling the familiar grain of the wood James had sanded smooth. This is my house. You're talking about my house like I'm not sitting right here. He actually rolled his eyes. My 42-year-old son rolled his eyes at me like a teenager. Mom, you're getting worked up over nothing. We've got it all figured out. The house will sell quick in this market. We already talked to a realtor? Already talked to a realtor about my house. The room started to spin slightly and I gripped the edge of the table. You talked to a realtor about selling my house? Well, yeah. He shrugged, going back to his phone. Sheila handles all that stuff. She's good with the business side of things. Sheila handles all that stuff. I thought about all the mail that had been mysteriously redirected, arriving already opened. The way Sheila always insisted on helping me with my computer, setting up passwords she said would be easier for me to remember, but somehow I never could. The stack of papers she'd had me sign a few months ago, claiming they were for updating insurance policies after the hurricane season. Where's Sheila? I asked, noting her absence with new significance. Meeting with the moving company, Jerome said without looking up. We need to figure out what's worth taking and what we should just sell. What we should just sell, in my own house, my mother's china cabinet, James's tool collection in the garage, the piano I'd saved for 10 years to buy, all reduced to what we should just sell. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor with a sound that made Jerome finally look at me properly. I need to go to my room, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. I need to think. Jerome shrugged again, already lost in whatever was on that screen. Sure, Mom, but don't stress about it. Like I said, we've got everything handled. As I walked down the hallway, past those baby pictures, past the pencil marks on the doorframe marking Jerome's height through the years, past the shadow box containing James's military medals, I realized something that chilled me to my bones. My son hadn't asked me if I wanted to move to Florida. He hadn't asked if I wanted to sell the house. He hadn't even asked if I was okay with any of this. He had simply informed me, like I was a tenant being given notice. Not his mother, not the owner of this house, not the woman who had given him life and loved him through every mistake and failure and triumph for 42 years. I closed my bedroom door, the bedroom that used to be mine and James's but was now just mine, and sat on the edge of the bed. The quilt my grandmother made was still spread across it, each square telling a story of our family history. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone. Something was very wrong here, more wrong than just my son's casual disregard for my feelings. But what I discovered when I started asking questions turned my whole world upside down. To understand how I ended up a stranger in my own home, I need to take you back to November 2019, the day Jerome stood at my front door with 2 suitcases and eyes that wouldn't quite meet mine. Mama, they let me go today. Those 5 words came out of his mouth like he was pulling teeth. Jerome had worked at the Nissan plant in Canton for 15 years, worked his way up from the assembly line to floor supervisor. Behind him, Sheila sat in their Honda Accord, her face unreadable behind those designer sunglasses she always wore, even on cloudy days. We just need a few months to get back on our feet. 3 months maximum, I promise. 3 months. I remember how specific he was about that timeline, like he'd rehearsed it in the car before walking up to my door. Of course, I said yes immediately. That's what mothers do. Your child needs you, you open your door, your heart, your refrigerator, whatever they need. I helped them carry their things into the guest room, the one I'd kept ready all these years just in case the kids ever needed to come home. Those first weeks, I'll admit, were nice. The house felt alive again in a way it hadn't since James retired. Sheila would cook these elaborate dinners. Her grandmother's gumbo recipe, bourbon glazed salmon, sweet potato casserole that could make you forget your own name. She'd hum while she cooked, old Motown songs that reminded me of my younger days. Jerome would come home from job interviews energized, talking about possibilities, making plans. We'd sit around the dinner table, and for a moment, it felt like family was supposed to feel. Miss Dolores, you've been carrying this house by yourself too long, Sheila said one evening about 2 months in, her hand touching mine across the table. Let me help with the grocery shopping. I've got all this time during the day while Jerome's out interviewing. Such a thoughtful gesture. She started doing the weekly shopping, always bringing back my favorite brand of coffee, the good butter I usually considered too expensive, fresh flowers for the kitchen table. When I tried to pay her back, she'd wave me off. Family doesn't keep tabs, she'd say with that smile that never quite reached her eyes, though I didn't notice that detail back then. Then came January 2020. James had been having back pain for months, but we thought it was just his old construction injuries acting up. The doctor visit that was supposed to be routine turned into a CT scan, which turned into an oncologist referral, which turned into the word that changes everything: cancer, pancreatic, stage 3. The next 18 months became a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy schedules, medication charts, and insurance paperwork that might as well have been written in another language. I barely knew what day it was, much less what was happening with the mail or the household bills. That's when Sheila stepped in, so naturally, I hardly noticed it happening. Let me handle the mail, miss. Dolores, she said one day when she found me crying over a stack of medical bills at the kitchen table. You focus on Mr. James. I'll make sure nothing important gets missed. She set up a whole system, she said. Had the mail forwarded to a P.O. box so nothing would pile up when we were at the hospital for James's treatments. Created a filing system for all the medical paperwork. Even offered to update all my passwords on the computer to something more secure after she read about seniors getting scammed online. You can't be using Blessed 1953 for everything, she chided gently, typing away on my laptop. I'll make them all variations of something you'll remember, but safer. I was grateful. Lord knows I was grateful. With James getting weaker by the day, unable to keep food down, calling out for his mother who'd been dead 20 years, I didn't have the mental space to think about passwords or filing systems. Sheila handled it all with quiet efficiency while I held my husband's hand and watched him disappear 1 pound at a time. Jerome got a job during this time, something in logistics, he said, but the hours were odd. Sometimes he'd leave at 4 in the morning, sometimes not until noon. When I asked about it, he'd just say, "It's complicated, Mama. Sheila understands it better than me." Always Sheila understands, Sheila handles it, Sheila knows best. James passed on a Thursday morning in May 2021. The hospice nurse had warned me it would be soon, but you're never ready. Never. I held his hand as his breathing slowed, told him it was okay to let go, that I'd be all right. The biggest lie I ever told him. The funeral was beautiful, if you can call such a thing beautiful. The church was packed, testimony to the good man James had been. But I moved through it like I was underwater, hearing everything distorted and far away. Afterwards, I couldn't tell you who spoke or what songs were sung. All I remember is Sheila's arm around my shoulders, guiding me where I needed to go, speaking for me when people offered condolences. The months after James died, I barely left my bedroom. Grief isn't just emotional, it's physical. Your bones ache. food tastes like cardboard. The simplest tasks feel impossible. Sheila brought me trays of food I didn't eat, handled phone calls I couldn't face, paid bills I forgot existed. "I've got everything under control," she'd say, patting my hand. "You just rest." By the time I started coming back to myself, maybe 6 months later, the house ran like clockwork without me. Sheila had taken over the weekly grocery shopping completely, managed all the utilities, handled the insurance claims from James's policies. She'd even rearranged the kitchen, putting everyday items where they were more convenient, though I could never find anything anymore. "You know, Miss Dolores," Sheila mentioned casually one day in early 2022, "this big bedroom is too much for you to maintain by yourself. Why don't we switch? The guest room is cozier, less for you to clean." Before I could really process what she was suggesting, she and Jerome were moving furniture. My grandmother's quilt ended up in what was now their room. James's dresser, the one his father made, got relegated to the garage. Within a weekend, 35 years of memories were reshuffled like a deck of cards. My church friends started noticing before I did. Sister Beverly pulled me aside after service one Sunday. "We haven't seen you at Bible study in months. Everything all right?" I made excuses, still grieving, still tired. But the truth was, Sheila always seemed to have something planned during Bible study time. Doctor appointments she'd scheduled for me, errands that couldn't wait, home repairs that required me to be there. "Your daughter-in-law seems very involved," Sister Beverly said carefully, the way church folks do when they want to say something but don't want to seem uncharitable. It was around this time I found a credit card statement in what used to be my desk drawer, but was now Sheila's office supplies area. A Visa card I didn't recognize, but with my name on it. When I asked Sheila about it, she laughed like I'd told a joke. "Oh, Miss Dolores, you signed up for that months ago, remember? Better rewards points for the grocery shopping. You were worried about money after Mr. James passed." I didn't remember, but then again, there was a lot I didn't remember from those dark months. She showed me my signature on the application, and there it was, though it looked shakier than usual. Must have been the grief, I told myself. What I didn't tell myself, what I couldn't face, was that my son had become a stranger. Jerome, who used to call me every day when he first moved out, who used to ask my advice about everything from job interviews to what tie to wear, now deferred to Sheila on everything. When I'd ask him something directly, his eyes would dart to her first, like he was checking for permission to answer. "Jerome got promoted," Sheila announced one evening at dinner 6 months ago. "He's making really good money now. We're thinking about our future." A promotion he hadn't told me about. His own mother. When I looked at him with hurt in my eyes, he just shrugged and said, "Sheila thought we should wait for the right time to tell you." The right time. Like my son's success was something that required proper timing to share with the woman who raised him. That night, lying in the guest room that still smelled like the lavender sachets from when it actually was a guest room, I realized I'd lost more than my husband. Somehow, while I was drowning in grief, I'd lost my son and my home too. I decided to do something I never thought I'd do to my own son. I started investigating. The morning after Jerome announced they were moving to Florida, I woke up at 4:47 a.m. with a plan and a determination I hadn't felt since James was alive. For the first time in months, I was going to beat Sheila to the mailbox. She usually collected it around 10 a.m., after her morning yoga routine that she did in what used to be my living room, now rearranged with her exercise mat permanently laid out where James's recliner used to sit. But that morning, I slipped out the back door while the sky was still purple-black, my house shoes getting soaked in the morning dew as I walked around to the front of the house. The metal mailbox was cold under my fingers, and inside I found 5 pieces of mail. 3 were addressed to me. A water bill, a grocery store circular, and a sympathy card from a distant cousin who apparently just heard about James. But the other 2 made my blood run cold. One was a statement from a bank I didn't recognize, addressed to Jerome and Sheila Williams at my address. The other was from a real estate company in Tampa, Florida, addressed to Mrs. Sheila Williams. I stuffed everything into the pocket of my housecoat and hurried back inside, my heart pounding like I was 16 sneaking back from a date. By the time Sheila came downstairs at 7:30, perfectly made up as always, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my usual cup of coffee, the mail hidden in my bedroom under the mattress like contraband. "Morning, Miss Dolores," she said, that false sweetness coating her words like syrup on burnt pancakes. "Sleep well?" "Like a baby," I lied, matching her fake smile with one of my own. For the next 3 days, I became someone I didn't recognize, a detective in my own home. When Sheila went to her spin class on Thursday, I searched Jerome's old room, the one he'd grown up in, where his high school trophies still lined the shelves. Behind those trophies, pushed back against the wall, I found a manila folder that would change everything. Florida Plan was written on the tab in Sheila's neat handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were real estate listings for houses in Tampa, all circled and annotated. Perfect for us. Great investment potential. Mother-in-law suite and back. That last note made me pause. Mother-in-law suite. Is that what I'd become? Not the owner of the house, but a mother-in-law who needed a suite in the back? But it got worse. There were printed emails between Sheila and someone named Brandon Chen, a realtor in Tampa. The dates went back 6 months. 6 months they'd been planning this move while sitting at my dinner table, eating my food, pretending everything was normal. One email made me sit down hard on Jerome's childhood bed. "We're looking at a May timeline for the sale. My husband's mother owns the house, but she's given us power of attorney due to her declining mental state. The house should clear at least $350,000 in this market." Declining mental state. I read those words over and over until they blurred. Is that what they'd been telling people? That I was losing my mind? Deeper in the folder, I found Jerome's job application for a position in Tampa, dated from last October. The salary line made me gasp. $120,000 annually. My son was making 6 figures while living in my house rent-free, claiming they couldn't afford their own place yet, letting me pay for utilities and groceries with my Social Security and James's pension. But the document that made me actually cry out was at the very bottom of the stack. A home equity line of credit on my house for $75,000, taken out in March 2021, 2 months before James died. The signature on the bottom looked like mine, but I knew I'd never sign this. Then I remembered those papers Sheila had me sign during James's final days, when I could barely see through my tears, when she said they were for medical expenses, when I trusted her because what else could I do? I took out my phone with shaking fingers and photographed every single page, every email, every document. The camera click sounded like thunder in the quiet room, and I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting Sheila to materialize in the doorway. But the house remained silent except for the grandfather clock in the hallway, marking time like it had for 3 generations. That afternoon, I pretended to nap, but actually went through the family computer in what used to be James's study. Sheila had changed the password, but she didn't know I'd watched her type it once. JEROME 2019, the year they moved in, the year everything started to change. Her email was still logged in. I found correspondence with a real estate agent named Marcia Hendricks, who was scheduled to come to the house next Tuesday for what Sheila called estate planning consultation. There were messages about staging the house for photos, about how to price it competitively, about whether to do repairs before listing or sell as is. "The owner is elderly and doesn't understand the market," Sheila had written. "We'll handle everything as her representatives." Representatives, like I was some corporation instead of a human being, a mother, a widow still grieving her husband. In another email thread, I discovered they'd opened a joint bank account using James's life insurance payout. The $50,000 that was supposed to be my security, my buffer against emergencies, was sitting in an account I couldn't access. They'd been using it to pay for their expenses while Jerome's salary went straight into savings for their Florida future. I was still sitting there staring at the screen in disbelief when I heard Sheila's voice from the kitchen. She was on the phone, and something about her tone made me lean closer to the door to listen. "No, we'll be fine," she was saying. "She's old and confused half the time. Even if she figures something out, who's going to believe her over her own son? We're the ones taking care of her. We're the ones who've been here. Jerome's on board. He knows this is best for everyone." Old and confused. Who's going to believe her? Each word was like a slap across my face. This woman, who I'd welcomed into my home, who I'd trusted with my finances during the darkest period of my life, was stealing from me and counting on my own son to back her up. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial my sister Loretta's number. She lived in Memphis, had been asking me to come visit for months, but I'd always said I couldn't leave Jerome and Sheila. "Dolores?" She answered on the third ring. "Everything okay? You sound like you're breathing heavy." "Loretta," I whispered, cupping my hand over the phone like I was telling secrets in church. "They're trying to steal my house." "What? Who's trying to steal your house?" "Jerome and Sheila. They've been planning it for months. They've got papers, loans, they're selling my house and moving to Florida, and they already told people I'm crazy." There was silence on the other end, then Loretta's voice came back, hard as iron. "Dolores Williams, you listen to me. You get copies of everything. You hear me? Everything. Then you call a lawyer. I don't care if Jerome is your son. They're trying to rob you blind." "But he's my baby," I said, and I hated how weak I sounded. "How can I turn against my own child?" "He turned against you first," Loretta said bluntly. "A child who would do this to his mother is no child at all." After I hung up, I sat in James's study feeling more alone than I had even after his death. At least then I had Jerome. Or I thought I did. Now I realized the son I'd been clinging to had disappeared somewhere along the way, replaced by a stranger who could plot to steal his mother's home while looking her in the eye every morning. I went back to my hiding spot to put the folder back exactly as I'd found it, but as I was sliding it behind the trophies, another paper fell out, one I'd missed before. It was a power of attorney document, dated just last month, giving Jerome and Sheila complete control over my finances and property. That's when I found the power of attorney document with my forged signature. I spent all day Saturday preparing for what would either be the end of my family or the beginning of my freedom. The pot roast went into the oven at exactly 2 p.m., just like my mother taught me 50 years ago. 3 pounds of chuck roast rubbed with garlic, thyme, and her secret ingredient, a tablespoon of coffee grounds that gave it that deep, rich flavor nobody could ever quite identify. I peeled the potatoes with deliberate care, each strip of skin falling into the sink like evidence of my determination. The carrots, the onions, the celery, everything cut with precision, while my mind rehearsed what I was about to do. I pulled out the good china, the set James's mother had given us for our wedding. Delicate blue roses painted on white porcelain, edged in real gold that you had to hand wash. These plates had seen Christmas dinners, Easter celebrations, Jerome's high school graduation party. Now they would witness something else entirely. If this was goodbye, we'd do it properly, with dignity, with grace. Everything they'd tried to steal from me. By 5 p.m., the house smelled like Sunday dinners from my childhood, when families meant something, when children respected their elders, when a mother's home was sacred. I'd even made cornbread from scratch, not that box mix Sheila always used, talking about how it was just as good. It wasn't. Nothing about Sheila was just as good as the real thing. I set the table for 3, using the linen napkins my grandmother had embroidered, the silver candlesticks from my 25th anniversary. On the sideboard, I placed a manila envelope thick with papers, face down like a loaded gun waiting to be drawn. Then I went to my room and put on my navy blue dress, the one I wore to church board meetings, the one that meant business. I fixed my hair, applied lipstick in the shade James always said made me look regal, and sprayed on the white diamonds perfume I saved for special occasions. At 6 p.m. sharp, I heard Jerome's car in the driveway. They came through the front door without knocking. When had that started? When had my own son stopped showing me the courtesy of announcing himself in my home? "Mama?" Jerome called out, and I heard the confusion in his voice. The dining room lights were dimmed, candles flickering, the table set like company was coming. "In here," I called back, my voice steady as bedrock. They appeared in the doorway, and I saw them register the scene. Sheila's eyes narrowed immediately, calculating, trying to figure out what game was being played. She was wearing jeans and one of those athletic tops she favored, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. The casual disrespect of her appearance against my formal table setting wasn't lost on either of us. "What's all this?" Jerome asked, gesturing at the spread. "Sunday dinner," I replied simply. "Sit down, the roast is getting cold." They exchanged glances, one of those married couple conversations without words that used to make me smile when I saw it. Now it made my stomach turn. They sat down slowly, Sheila's eyes never leaving my face, like a cat watching for sudden movements. I served them myself, ladling the gravy over their meat, making sure everyone had vegetables, pouring sweet tea into the crystal glasses I'd gotten from my mother's estate. We ate in silence for exactly 3 minutes. I counted. Then I set down my fork with a deliberate click against the china. "So, Jerome," I said, dabbing my lips with the linen napkin, "how's the new position? The one paying $120,000? The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the candle wax dripping. Sheila's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. Jerome's fork clattered onto his plate, bouncing once before settling. "I don't... What are you..." Jerome stammered, his eyes darting to Sheila like a child looking for his mother's permission to speak. "What position?" Sheila tried, her voice artificially light. "Jerome hasn't... Stop lying to me in my own house." I reached for the manila envelope and pulled out the first document, Jerome's offer letter from Tampa Logistics Incorporated, dated October 2023, starting salary $120,000 plus benefits. I set it on the table between us like a playing card. "This position..." Jerome's mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. Sheila recovered faster, always did. "You went through our things," she said, trying for outrage but landing on defensive. "My house," I replied calmly, pulling out the next paper. "My things, like this home equity line of credit for $75,000 that you had me sign when James was dying." I placed it next to the offer letter. "Told me it was for medical expenses, but the dates don't match, do they? James's treatments were covered by insurance. This money went somewhere else." "Now wait a minute." Sheila started, but I wasn't done. "Or these emails," I continued, pulling out the printed pages, fanning them across the table like tarot cards revealing their future. "About selling my house, about my declining mental state, about the offer you put on a house in Tampa using my husband's life insurance money." Sheila's mask finally cracked, and underneath was something ugly, something that had been there all along, but hidden behind smiles and false concern. "You don't understand what we've done for you," she said, her voice hard now, no more pretense. "You're getting old. You can't manage this house. You need supervision." "Supervision?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what you call stealing? Is that what you call forging my signature on a power of attorney document?" Jerome finally found his voice. "Mama, we were going to take care of you. The house in Florida has space for you. We weren't abandoning you." "No," I said, looking at my son, really looking at him. You were just stealing from me, planning to drag me to Florida like luggage, stick me in some back room while you lived off the sale of my house. The house your father built, the house you grew up in. It's more complicated than that, Jerome said weakly. No, baby, it's not. I stood up, walked to the sideboard, and pulled out my phone. See, after I found all your paperwork, I did something else. I called Mr. Harrison. William Harrison, the lawyer who'd handled James's will, who'd known our family for 30 years. And then I called the police. Sheila shot up from her chair so fast it tipped backward. You did what? Forgery is a felony, I said conversationally, like I was discussing the weather. Fraud, too. Mr. Harrison explained it all to me. He was very interested in that power of attorney document with my signature that I never signed. No one will believe you over your own son. Sheila spat, her pretty face twisted into something savage. You're just a confused old woman who can't accept that she needs help. That's when I played my ace. I picked up my phone, swiped to the video app, and hit play. There on the screen was footage from the security camera James had installed in the living room years ago, the one they never knew was connected to the cloud. There was Sheila at my desk, practicing my signature over and over on scratch paper. There she was, holding the power of attorney document next to my old signatures, carefully forging my name. The color drained from both their faces. Mama, Jerome whispered, and suddenly he looked like the little boy who used to come to me with scraped knees, looking for comfort. Mama, I'm sorry. She said she convinced me you were getting confused, forgetting things. She said we were helping you. Don't you dare! Sheila turned on him, her voice venomous. Don't you dare put this on me. You wanted that money just as much. You were tired of living in this backwards town, tired of being Mama's boy. And there it was, the truth, raw and ugly, spilled across my grandmother's linen tablecloth like red wine. My son, my baby boy, had chosen greed over love, a woman over his mother, money over family. I walked to the front door and opened it wide, letting the cool evening air flow in. Get out of my house. You have 1 hour. The police arrived 43 minutes after Jerome and Sheila stormed out, their blue lights painting my living room walls in rhythms that reminded me of a heartbeat. Officer Washington, a young black woman who couldn't have been older than 30, sat across from me at the same dining table where I'd just destroyed my family. She took notes while I showed her everything, the forged documents, the security footage, the emails about my supposed mental decline. Her partner, Officer Chen, photographed each piece of evidence with methodical precision, treating my dining room like a crime scene, which I suppose it was. Mrs. Williams, Officer Washington said gently, this is elder financial abuse. It's more common than you'd think, and it's serious. Are you prepared to press charges? Before I could answer, I heard Jerome's car return. Through the window, I watched my son stumble out, his face swollen from crying. He was carrying boxes, the ones from the garage I'd marked for donation months ago, but Sheila had insisted on keeping. His hands shook as he loaded them into the trunk. Mama, I'm sorry, he called through the still open door, his voice breaking like it did when he was 13, and his voice was changing. Mama, please, I'm so sorry. Sheila sat in the passenger seat, her face illuminated by her phone screen, already making calls. Through the quiet evening air, I could hear fragments. Lawyer, elder abuse, false accusations, dementia evaluation. Yes, I told Officer Washington, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm pressing charges. Jerome collapsed against his car when the officers approached him. He didn't resist when they explained he needed to come to the station for questioning. But Sheila, Lord, that woman showed her true colors. She erupted from the car screaming about lawsuits, about discrimination, about her rights. She filmed everything on her phone, shouting that I was unstable, that this was a setup, that Jerome was being manipulated by his senile mother. After they left, Jerome in the police car, Sheila following in theirs, the house fell into a silence so complete I could hear my own breathing echo off the walls. I walked through each room, seeing it with new eyes. The living room where Sheila had rearranged my furniture. The kitchen where she'd reorganized my cabinets. The master bedroom that she'd claimed while relegating me to the guest room like a boarder in my own home. At 11 p.m., I called Mr. Jeffries, the locksmith who'd installed these locks when James and I first bought the house. "I need everything changed tonight," I told him. "Every lock, every deadbolt." "Tonight, Mrs. Williams, it's pretty late." "Tonight," I repeated, "I'll pay extra." He came, bless him, arriving within an hour with his tools and new hardware. While he worked, I sat on my porch in James's old jacket, watching the street like I was standing guard. Mrs. Henderson from next door came out in her housecoat. "Everything all right, Dolores?" she asked, noting the locksmith van. "It will be," I told her. "Finally, it will be." The next morning, Mr. Harrison confirmed what I already knew in my gut. The forged power of attorney was criminal. The fraudulent use of my home's equity was criminal. Taking James's life insurance without my knowledge was criminal. "They're looking at serious charges," he said, adjusting his glasses. "This is systematic elder abuse." That same day, my phone started ringing off the hook. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly concerned about family business. Church members suggesting I should handle this privately. Even my late husband's brother Carl called from Houston, saying I was breaking up the family over money. "The family was already broken," I told him. "I'm just refusing to be buried in the wreckage." Jerome called from Florida 3 days later. They'd gone straight there after being released, probably thinking distance would protect them. His voice was small, defeated. "Mama, I know what we did was wrong, but please, can we talk? Just you and me without Sheila?" "Talking doesn't undo forgery," I said, surprised by my own steadiness. "Talking doesn't return the money you stole. I'll pay it back. Every penny. I'll testify against Sheila. She orchestrated everything, Mama. She convinced me you were showing signs of dementia. She said we were protecting you from yourself." "Forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences, Jerome." I hung up before he could respond. Over the next weeks, the full extent of their theft became clear. My mother's pearl necklace, gone, sold online for $2,000. Series E savings bonds James had bought for our retirement, cashed without my knowledge. Even small things, my father's pocket watch, a first edition book collection, silver serving pieces from my wedding. They'd been selling off my life piece by piece while I grieved James. The house felt cavernous with just me in it. Every room held ghosts, not just of James, but of the son I thought I'd raised. I'd catch myself setting 3 places for dinner, then remember. I'd hear a car in the driveway and think Jerome was home from work, then remember, but I wasn't alone. My church family, the real one, circled around me like a fortress. Sister Beverly organized meal trains. Every evening at 6 p.m., someone appeared with a covered dish and a kind word. Deacon Harris mowed my lawn without being asked. The youth group showed up one Saturday and cleaned out the garage, hauling away all the things Jerome and Sheila had left behind. Loretta drove down from Memphis and moved into the guest room. "Just temporarily," she said, but we both knew it was indefinite. She helped me reclaim my house, moving my things back into the master bedroom, reorganizing the kitchen the way I'd always had it, hanging family photos back where they belonged. "You're stronger than you know," she said one night as we sorted through paperwork. "Not everyone could do what you're doing." I joined a support group at the Community Center for Seniors who'd experienced financial abuse. The stories were heartbreakingly similar. Children who saw their parents as ATMs, relatives who preyed on grief and loneliness, caregivers who stole while pretending to help. We were a room full of broken trust, but somehow that made us stronger. My daughter took out credit cards in my name, said Mr. Eugene, 73, retired postal worker. My nephew convinced me to sign over my car title, added Ms. Catherine, 69, former teacher. We weren't just victims, we were survivors. I started speaking at churches around Jackson, telling my story as a warning. Watch for the signs, I'd say to packed pews. Isolation from friends, financial secrecy, sudden interest in your affairs, documents appearing for signature during emotional moments. Don't let love make you blind. The criminal case moved forward slowly but steadily. In September, I got the call. Sheila had been arrested at the Florida house. The charges were serious: forgery, fraud, elder abuse. She was looking at real prison time. Jerome, who'd cooperated fully with the investigation, faced lesser charges but still criminal ones. His testimony against his wife was devastating and detailed. He revealed how she'd researched elder law, looking for loopholes, how she'd practiced my signature for weeks, how she'd slowly isolated me from anyone who might have intervened. But the story doesn't end with justice being served. 2 years have passed since that Sunday dinner that changed everything, and this morning I stood in my kitchen, truly my kitchen again, brewing coffee in the same pot James bought me 30 years ago. The house breathes differently now. Sunlight pours through windows I'd forgotten Sheila had covered with heavy drapes. My walls, once bare because she'd packed away my photos, claiming they were cluttered, now tell the story of my life in full color. There's James in his army uniform, my babies taking their first steps, my parents on their 40th anniversary. Every picture rehung with intention, each memory reclaimed and displayed with pride. The garden out back, which had gone to seed while I was lost in grief and betrayal, now blooms with collard greens, tomatoes, and the roses James planted for our 20th anniversary. I work it every morning, my hands in the soil, feeling connected to something real and honest. The earth doesn't lie. It gives back exactly what you put into it. Above the back door, a new security system blinks steadily. Cameras that I control, passwords only I know. My financial documents live in a safety deposit box at the bank with copies held by Mr. Harrison. I've become meticulous about protection in ways I never imagined necessary. Trust is beautiful, but verification is wisdom. My phone rings at 3 p.m. on the first Sunday of each month. It's Jerome, calling from his apartment in Birmingham where he moved after his divorce from Sheila was finalized. Yes, she divorced him the moment her lawyer told her there was no money left to fight for. Funny how love evaporates when the wallet empties. "Hi, Mama," he says, his voice carrying a humility that wasn't there before. "How you doing today?" We talk for exactly 30 minutes. He tells me about his job at a warehouse, honest work that pays honest money. He's in therapy, he says, trying to understand how he lost himself so completely. He sends me $200 every month toward what he stole. It'll take years to repay, but he insists on trying. I don't cash the checks. I'm keeping them in an envelope marked "Lessons Learned." Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't the same as forgetting. It's not the same as trust. Forgiveness is releasing the poison of anger so it doesn't kill you from the inside. But boundaries. Boundaries are the fence you build to protect your peace. Jerome is forgiven, but he'll never again have a key to my house. Let me share something that might save you or someone you love. Elder financial abuse affects 1 in 5 seniors in America. 1 in 5. That's 7.86 million people last year alone. The perpetrator is family in 60% of cases. These aren't statistics from some distant study. These are our neighbors, our friends, ourselves. The warning signs I missed were all there, clear as day in hindsight. The gradual isolation from friends? "Oh, Miss Dolores is too tired for visitors today." The sudden interest in my financial affairs? "Just trying to help you get organized." The pressure to sign documents during emotional moments, the hospital needs this now. the subtle suggestions that I was becoming forgetful. Don't you remember agreeing to this? Here's what I know now that I wish I'd known then. Never sign anything when you're emotional, tired, or pressured, ever. If it's truly urgent, it can wait for lawyer review. Keep your financial documents private and secure. Love doesn't require financial transparency with adult children. If someone suggests you're becoming confused or forgetful, get an independent medical evaluation, not their word for it. And please, please, maintain your own relationships, your own activities, your own identity outside of family. Trust but verify isn't paranoia, it's prudence. You can love your children and still lock your important papers in a safe. You can welcome family into your home and still maintain control of your finances. You can be generous and still be guarded. I started this YouTube channel 6 months ago. Miss Dolores Speaks Truth, and Lord, the response has been overwhelming. 15,000 subscribers, all sharing their stories, their pain, their victories. I read every comment, every email. "Your story saved my mother," one woman wrote. "My father was going through the same thing and didn't know how to fight back," wrote another. To the adult children watching, your parents' dignity matters more than your convenience. Their independence is not your inconvenience. They spent decades building their lives, and that deserves respect, not theft disguised as care. If you're genuinely concerned about a parent's capability, there are legal, ethical, transparent ways to help. Stealing isn't one of them. To my fellow seniors, your age doesn't diminish your rights. Growing older doesn't mean growing powerless. You have the right to your own money, your own home, your own decisions. Don't let anyone, not even your own children, convince you otherwise. You are not a burden to be managed. You are a person deserving of dignity. I chose peace over bitterness, but peace doesn't mean passivity. Peace means fighting for justice without letting revenge consume you. It means rebuilding without constantly looking backward. It means opening your heart to new possibilities while keeping your guard up against old patterns. Every Thursday, my dining room table, the one where I confronted my son, now hosts 6 to 8 seniors from our community. We share meals I cook from scratch, stories that need telling, and information about protecting ourselves. We've become each other's early warning system, each other's strength when family fails us. That table that witnessed betrayal now witnesses resilience. If this story stirred something in you, share it. Not for me, but for someone who might be suffering in silence, thinking they're alone, thinking they have no options. Protect your loved ones by talking about these hard truths. Uncomfortable conversations over Sunday dinner are better than criminal charges over stolen inheritance. To those who've asked how I sleep at night after turning in my own son, peacefully. I sleep peacefully in my own bed, in my own room, in my own house that I fought to keep. I wake up to birds singing in my garden and coffee brewing in my kitchen, and the knowledge that I stood up for myself when it mattered most. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Tell me your story in the comments. Where are you watching from? What time is it there? Have you or someone you know faced something similar? Your stories strengthen all of us. My garden needs tending now. The tomatoes are coming in beautifully this year, and the roses have never been fuller. This house, this life, this peace, I earned it all twice. Once through decades of love and work with James, and again through the courage to defend it when my own blood tried to steal it. Your home is your castle, and you alone hold the keys. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise, no matter what they call you. Confused, old, difficult, or selfish. Those are words meant to weaken your resolve. Stand firm. This is Dolores Williams from Jackson, Mississippi, reminding you that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Never too late to reclaim your power. Never too late to say, "This is my house, my rules." And that's the truth.